Hello and welcome to a very special WrestleMania Favorite Fives show for your listening pleasure to you wonderful Patreons who pay all of the monies to get all of the wonders for free. I am joined at this look back at the granddaddy of them all, the spectacle of the immortals, by Bob. How the devil are we, Bob?
Doing great. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys for the next 8 hours, just like what WrestleMania has turned into. So, folks, sit back and relax.
This is
I
just
got
the
my
pre-show,
Red Bulls
right?
ready. Yeah, this is the pre-show for the pre-show for the pre-show of the main show.
Ah, now I know. Now I get
Yeah,
you.
so we're gonna be. I know you were just saying like this is gonna be a quick one. He's fooling you guys. If you look at the time cue here, it's about 8.5 hours. We're going every match, every Mania, live watching them right now. So actually, it's going to be about 190 hours of material crammed into 8 because we're fast forwarding it times 8. So be prepared for some fun, right? Am I correct? Is that what we're doing this week?
That was next week's show.
Damn it.
And we are also joined by Dan. How the devil are we, Dan?
I'm good. I'm being quick. Let's move on.
It's not really. We're not really watching everything at triple speed. It's okay. So we will start with our favourite manias. So, Bob, what is your fifth favourite WrestleMania?
Well, this one is going to be WrestleMania 14 for myself. I don't know if you want me to give a backstory or reason behind it, but I guess I'll just do that anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you do have a reason for why you rate it where you do.
Sure. It's my first ever WrestleMania to watch on pay-per-view, and I was actually tricked into actually getting it because for weeks I begged my father to allow me to get it, and he was like, "No, absolutely not. We saw a guy get shoved in a dumpster off a stage. You're not old enough to be watching this type of stuff." I begged, I pleaded. The night of, about 6:30, he yelled out to me in the backyard saying, "Hey, Bob, you coming inside or what?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" Mind you, I'm hanging out with my best friend at the time. And he said, "For your show, your little wrestling show thing." And I had never ran back into the house so quick in my entire life to watch WrestleMania 14, the pinnacle of the Attitude Era, or the beginning of it at least. And it turned out to be, in my about to be 10-year-old brain, one of the best shows that I ever sat through. And it's one that I can still go to today and just pretend that I'm still that 10-year-old kid thinking that there's no way The Undertaker is going to beat Kane in the beginning of the Austin era. So that's got a soft spot in my heart, to say the least.
I was gonna say, I think we all have that one mania that, because I know when I go through mine, one of mine is because it was the first one I watched.
Right.
I think that's one of those, when you're a kid, there's that special connection. And the thing is, Mania 14 actually does hold up quite well, which helps.
Yeah.
Unlike
Absolutely.
if you've listened to last month's show, Mania 15 really doesn't.
Yeah.
Dan, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is a very, very recent one. It was only 2 years ago. WrestleMania 33.
33 was that maggots on with the
Yes,
Orton?
that's not something I choose to remember, really. What I kind of remember is the Smash Mouth horse battle between Goldberg and Lesnar, the return of the Hardy Boys, the proposal between Cena and Nikki, and of course, it's not his proper retirement because obviously there's those matches in that random country that we choose to ignore. But
I don't know what you're on about.
Realistically, the retirement of the Undertaker as a main event player, because he's now no longer featured in major Mania spots. He's only comes out for bits and pieces here and there, and it's one of the most iconic moments of him just slowly disrobing that character and just walking off as Mark Calloway. It's really just powerful stuff. and it has been eroded a little bit since, but I still have it in my head that that's his retirement in my head, And Ric Flair's retirement ceremony in 2008, sorry. Everyone still thinks that's Ric Flair's retirement ceremony, even though he wrestled for another 2 years in TNA. So to me, this was just the send off of WrestleMania's most synonymous wrestler, and that has a special place in my heart. And then you've got two, in my opinion, great matches at the start of the show with AJ and Shane McMahon. AJ can do no wrong. And a satisfying match between Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho, even though Vince didn't like it. I liked it. I loved it, which kind of paid off one of the best Raw segments ever. So it's not a WrestleMania I don't think gets a lot of love, but to me, it's probably the best modern day WrestleMania since it became the 8.5-hour behemoth that Bob's referenced earlier. So,
See, my things with this one, like I know it sucks. The thing that I remember is obviously Bray and the shit on the mat sort of video screen things, but it was actually sort of you going through it. It's like, yeah, the Hardys came back in that one. Yeah, there was that. I didn't like the fact that Taker lost, but the pomp and circumstance at the end where he's taking all his gear off and putting it down was really awesome. So yeah, that is one of those ones where I think I need to go back and rewatch it because I don't think I've watched it again since it happened and sort of remember how good it was. So my fifth is WrestleMania Play, aka WrestleMania 31. Again, this is the newest one on my list. It had some real good fun moments. It had the first part where we saw Ronda Rousey when she lobbed Trips over when it was her and Rock. We finally saw Sting in a WWF ring. There's the greatest cash-in of the Money in the Bank. There is Bryan at the time coming back from injury to win the ladder match. It's one of those that everything was good. Yes, it wasn't great. The Sting match was two old guys, lots of run-ins, but it was fun. Taker looked a bit weird coming out sort of half daylight, but it was still a decent match with Bray. It's the best of the modern era manias. So we will run through the selections from one of our fellow co-hosts who isn't here this evening, Mr. Peter Kimber. His fifth place was WrestleMania 24, where Flair retires. His fourth place was WrestleMania 17, Austin Rock. Third, WrestleMania Play. Second, Mania 6, Warrior Hogan. And his favorite is WrestleMania 5, the Mega Powers Explode. So let it be said that we have a giant array of choices around here, and Mania 17 isn't winning by everyone. So, Bob, what is your number 4?
WrestleMania 7. That is the first WrestleMania that I was able to rent on tape. So I'd be watching the modern WrestleManias. That was the first WrestleMania I grabbed on VHS, and I freaking wore that one through multiple times over. To me, I think it's one of the more underappreciated shows. Obviously, when you kind of look at some of the big matches, the tag match with the Nasty Boys Heart Foundation is pretty solid. Blindfold match is kind of entertaining. Obviously Warrior Savage and then Hogan Slaughter, but it's the Mania debut of the Undertaker. It's Earthquake kind of showing off what he'll do later that month or later in the year, and then you can't ever go wrong with a show where Virgil gets a win. Sure, it was a count out, but he still won at WrestleMania. So I'd say WrestleMania 7 is one that I can put on at any time. That's another one. Sure, there's like 15 matches on or whatever, 14 matches, but that's one that I have no problem being able to sit through.
See, I do remember this one, and yeah, it's fun. It's overlooked for for what it is. Dan, what's your number 4?
WrestleMania Goes Hollywood 21. You've got mainly the changing of the guard into Ruthless Aggression 2, with Batista and John Cena being crowned as the new champions. In one of them is a bit of a damp squib of a match, but in my opinion, Batista beating Triple H is always fun. And they're going at it again this year. So, all things good, things come to an end. But the undercard is so good. I mean, you've got Ray and Eddie, Orton and Taker, where the streak is just coming to the fore as a big storyline point. The very first Money in the Bank match, which in my opinion is still probably the best one, because you've got Shelton Benjamin being amazing. The star power in that match is fantastic. And then, of course, you've got that amazing Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels match, which is, do I need to say more? Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels. It's just those two guys wrestling. That's worth the price of admission alone. And you've got, it felt like a really big occasion, as WrestleMania should do, but it did feel historically significant with the crowning of two, guys who were synonymous with the 2000s.
Yeah, it's one of those of, again, it gets overlooked and shouldn't do, because it is awesome. My number 4 is one of the ones that I think gets overlooked because of all the hype was about one of the main events, which didn't really live up to standings, but that's WrestleMania 19. Other than Hogan and Vince having their blood-filled spew off of just ego, the rest of this card is really good. You've got Brock and Angle, which was great. You've got the last Austin and Rock match. The Taker match on it is not great, but that's okay because we do get Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. Limp Bizkit singing Crack Addict, which is a wonderfully forgotten Limp Bizkit song. It's one of my... It is one of the ones, if I'm feeling like I just want to chuck a Mania on and want to kill 2 hours or 2.5 hours, I will chuck this one on because it flies by. So Rory's picks for his Manias of choice. He has honourable mentions for 6, 20, and 24, but his main picks are WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 8, WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 17, and then WrestleMania 19. Bob, what's your third choice?
I put WrestleMania 21 here. Pretty much what you guys just talked about. Angle Michaels is one of the best matches that you'll see. Ray Guerrero getting a chance to do their thing on the biggest stage was pretty cool. And obviously that Money in the Bank, we can't discredit Benoit's selling of his arm in that match. And obviously it's a new era with Cena and Batista, being the top guys for, the next 10 plus years. So, and there's not really all that bad wrestling aside from maybe the Big Show, Akibono stuff. But yeah, that's another one that I, over the years, have been able to appreciate more than I probably had in the past.
Dan, what's your number 3?
24, which is also the retirement of another legendary wrestler in Ric Flair. It's, the most iconic line in wrestling, kind of, "I'm sorry, I love you, bang." Old Yoda's put to pasture. You've got a really great main event between Undertaker and Edge, with, the World Heavyweight title main eventing ahead of the WWE, which is interesting in itself. The Big Show and Floyd Mayweather, in one of the best celebrity wrestler angles ever. They're probably the biggest 3, and I just think it feels special because, again, that Ric Flair moment is just so emotionally powerful. And I can imagine if you were a child of the 80s and you grew up watching Ric Flair in NWA, this Mania might be quite higher up your list, but it's still number 3 for me, which is pretty high, in fairness. And again, another excellent Money in the Bank match, but that's kind of the same with all these kind of late 2000s WrestleManias. But yeah, I think it's a really great show just for that one line.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the most iconic WrestleMania moments. Sorry, I love you. Bang, super kick. So my third choice is actually WrestleMania 23, which again, we can't have a perfect show. It does have the twat that's running the White House and the hair versus hair match, but we can overlook that because you get an awesome John Cena versus Shawn Michaels match. The Undertaker Batista match is awesome. It's the one time that my ECW boys get their WrestleMania moment. RVD, Sabu, Sandman, and Tommy Dreamer all at WrestleMania. Benoit and MVP is really, really good. And it, again, has a decent Money in the Bank match, which obviously at this period of time, the Money in the Bank matches were all really, really awesome. So yeah, it is definitely one of the ones that is, if you can get away from Captain Orange being involved, a decent show. So Eric's top 5 is at 5, 8, at 4, 17, at 3, 10. Number 2 is WrestleMania 20, and his number 1 is WrestleMania 11. Takes all sorts. Bob, what is your number 2?
Number 2 for me is WrestleMania 20. This one for me is, I think it's my second to last WrestleMania that I ever ordered before the network era. Cena's rise beginning, the Christian match with Jericho and the turn by Trish, stuff like that. Rock and Sock Connection being there. The crowd atmosphere for Goldberg Lesnar with Austin as the referee. Guerrero Angle, Taker Kane rematch. So it's bringing me back to being the 10-year-old kid from 6 years prior, whichever it was, and then or 8 years prior. And then the main event with Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. Arguably one of the last times in my teenage years where I was emotionally invested in an angle and a match, considering I was a Benoit guy dating back to his WCW run where he seemingly could never win a title. So to see him win it live against the number 1 heel, making him submit in the middle of the ring or close to the ropes, that's something that I will never forget as a wrestling fan, despite everything that would transpire later on in his life.
Dan, what's your number 2?
WrestleMania 30.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Like Bob mentioned, there's nothing like getting emotionally invested in a big storyline in WrestleMania. And yeah, Daniel Bryan is just nothing more needs to be said. That entire 2-month stretch when I was kind of not really paying attention to much in the wrestling world, but I had watched so much Bryan Danielson in my teenage years with Ring of Honor on the wrestling channel, and seeing him being crowned the guy with the entire stadium just erupting when Batista taps is special. I'm never going to forget it. And that's one of those. It's one of those YouTube clips that I would randomly turn on just to make myself a little bit happier in the day, which is good. And of course, the Undertaker streak. Like, I can't tell you how gobsmacked the world was when that happened. I didn't watch it live, but the first thing I did when I checked on Twitter in the morning, all I see is the Undertaker, being the number 1 trend, and seeing all the gifs and the memes, and you're just stunned. So just for that moment alone, it's you've got the shock of Undertaker, but the joy of Daniel Bryan, and a great match in there too. And you also got a forgotten little gem in Bray Wyatt versus John Cena, when Bray Wyatt was actually a legitimately serious threat. And also, I think when you go.
I was saying, I so close to getting in my top 5 was WrestleMania 30 because it was the first one that I watched in a pub live, like with a load of people, and that minute when Taker lost, the pub went silent. everyone in the room was just like, what the fuck has just happened? And just there was one guy, because there was obviously, with it being wrestling fans, there was a bit of dressing up and stuff, and there was this one guy that came dressed as Old School Taker, sort of early 90s, and he just had this look in his eye of like all his hopes and dreams had gone because of this one moment. And that's the beauty of wrestling, you know. In a football match, a win or a loss, unless it's, you know, relegation or promotion or something sort of major like a cup final, doesn't bring grown men to tears. But in a scripted reality, a scripted sport, and then you see that, and just the emotion that it gave people of our hero has been defeated. You only get that once. So my number 2 is WrestleMania 6. And yes, I know WrestleMania 6 is pretty awful, really. It's one of those that has a lot of bad matches in. But the reason it holds up as on this high on this chart is it was my first Mania. It was the time that Hogan lost, because being English, Hogan waving the American flag and giving all the God and prayers and vitamins and, you know, all the Love America stuff that it was, didn't really click with me. But this crazy guy in face paint telling us that he's going to crash an airplane and take out the pilots and, you know, battle to immortality, I'm all in. You've then got Demolition, who I like. Again, it's a thing with face paint, clearly, as a youngster. The $1 Million Man got his ass handed to him. So it's like all my favorite people won, and all the bad guys that I really hated got a hide in. It was just the perfect thing for being a kid. Yes, I've gone back and watched it, and only bits of it hold up today. But taking me back to being 6 and watching it, it will always have a very special place for me. So, last of our contributions is from Billy. Billy's top 5 are at 5, Mania 10, at 4, Mania 8, at 3, Mania 19, at 2, Mania 24, and number 1, WrestleMania 17. And I know, because you've both sent yours over, that all 3 of us have picked the same Mania as our number 1. So, Bob,
27, right?
Why is WrestleMania 17 the best?
For me, it's just a loaded show for the time, and I think just everything about it, for the Limp Bizkit My Way song and music video to kind of promote Austin and Rock. Anytime I see that, I feel like I need to go watch the entire show again. So many memorable moments on it for me, with Linda standing up, the ovation that got, just one simple action, kind of really might have been inspired similar to what Ron Wright did in Smoky Mountain to a lesser extent. The TLC match was phenomenal. I believe that was the 3rd one they had done. And by that point, there was no way that they could one up themselves ever again. And then, really, Austin and Rock, it's the rematch of the century for the time, one that was probably 60-40 for Austin, and it was in Texas. So it just gives you an idea of how over The Rock was. It's kind of like the modern, for like, I was about 12 at that time, about to turn 12. So that was probably my version of what Warrior Hogan would have probably been years prior. Of course, the unfortunate heel turn by Austin kind of destroyed their momentum for quite a long time. But it's really just a show that I guess I just went with soft spots in my heart and things that I just remember as a kid, that I was glued to my television for 3 hours back when WrestleMania was appropriately timed and did not start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and lasted till 1 in the morning.
Yes. Well, you got to think UK time that starts at midnight and finishes at 4, which is okay. It's last year's WrestleMania started at 10 in the evening and finished at just before 6 in the
That's
morning.
insane. That is just insane to me.
And then I was just like, why do I do this to myself? And then I had to get up to take Little into school. So it was like I didn't go to sleep. I just took Little into school and then came home and then went to bed. But yeah, it's not great being a UK wrestling fan at this sort of time of the year because the pay-per-views are just too bloody long. So, Dan, you too have gone with 17. Why is it your favourite?
Well, my first WrestleMania was 15, so I didn't really have much to go on with that one.
Your only way is up on that one, then.
Yeah.
The next one was 16, with the heel retaining the title for the first time ever, and he retired Mick Foley, so fuck that show. So then we get to 17, and it is glorious as for a child of 10 years old who is seeing WrestleMania for the first time in the big stadium, because at that point WrestleManias were always kind of in the same arenas, so it just felt like the first time. Just felt like the big show. There's so much variety on that card. Like, take out the main events and the big storylines, but you've also got the garbage hardcore stuff with Big Show, Kane, and Raven, the technical ground stuff with Angle and Benoit, TLC, obviously, the right to censor, a forgotten gem of the undercard, being completely trounced on that card. And then obviously the big matches are just so much fun in an Attitude Era brawling style of wrestling, which everyone had become accustomed to for 3 years. Shane and Vince is glorious fun, even though I don't think it holds up as well as it did back then. Undertaker versus Triple H, which some people say never happened, is actually a lot of fun, and probably badass Undertaker's best ever match. And Rock Austin is just Rock and Austin, isn't it? It's as Bob said, that My Way promo video it's impossible to watch that without getting goosebumps. I even watched it on the train home this morning, because I was sent over the ballot and I was like, oh, WrestleMania 17. Let's just put this on quickly, and it still gives me chills. Everything about that show is peak wrestling. Not necessarily the best in all the ways. I mean, the heel turn is what it is, but if you want to show someone a WrestleMania with everything that comes with it, I think that's the show for you.
Yeah, I can't really add much more than what you've said. The only match you haven't mentioned, which I do really have a soft spot for, is the Jericho Regal match that opens the show, that was all built around the fact that Jericho pissed in Regal's tea. Attitude Era, it's best. Yeah, everyone had a fucking stellar night on this show. It was one of those where everything aligned. The gimmick battle royal did exactly what it needed to be. It was the perfect breakup moment between two of the big matches. It worked perfectly. Just everything about this show falls into place and is just great. It is easily the easiest 3.5 hours of wrestling that the WWF have ever put out to watch. We've all said it's just an easy watch. Everything is great. Do yourselves a favor and watch it again, because you won't be disappointed. So we have now gone from our favorite complete manias, and it is now our top 5 favorite matches from Mania. So we'll mix it up a little bit. And Dan, what's your 5th favorite match?
Well, I'm actually going to change the one I sent to you earlier, Chris. That's okay. No,
it's all right.
What a swerve!
I know.
I was originally going to put Flair versus Michaels at number 5, but I thought about it since I made it, and the match I go back and watch more and enjoy more is still Daniel Bryan versus Triple H at WrestleMania 30, for all the reasons I listed off earlier. Alongside that monster the monster video package with Daniel Bryan And yeah, you don't like Flair Michaels is fantastic, but you know the outcome. Going into that match at 30, you don't know the outcome really, because you always think, oh, Triple H could just be Triple H here. But Brian pulls into an absolute stunner of a match. And it kind of gives a false sense of security about how good Triple H is as a wrestler at that point. And looking back at all the matches he's had since then, it's clear that Daniel Bryan was just Daniel Bryan and just got an absolute classic out of him. It's fantastic.
Bob, what's your number 5?
My match is similar to what Dan just said. With you don't know if it's really going to happen or not, and that was the WrestleMania 20 main event that I had mentioned earlier between Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. I went, you go into it, you're hoping and praying that Benoit is going to do it, and put on the crossface a few times on Triple H, and he couldn't get it. I think he got pinned almost a couple times going out of it, so you're just dreading it. And then that moment when his hand hits the mat a couple of times, he's bleeding, he's choking himself on his own blood and on the hands. That is a match that I can go back to for the 24 minutes or however long it was, and just enjoy the story and the biggest moment for Benoit's career as a character and as an in-ring performer, and still enjoy it today. I know maybe other people are not able to do so, but I'm in that category that can. And yeah, that's I think it's the best matches are the ones where you're not quite sure if it's going to actually happen. And for me, that was for sure the case.
See, my number 5 is very much in the same vein, where was it going to happen? Was the torch going to be passed? And it's Warrior versus Hogan from WrestleMania 6. As I said when I was talking about WrestleMania 6, I wasn't a massive Hogan guy. It's never really appealed to me. But Warrior was my guy, and I was like, but Hogan never loses. Hogan always keeps the title. And I was like, Warrior's got the Intercontinental belt. He can't win both belts. But yet, you get the second greatest Ultimate Warrior match out of it. The best Warrior match was him versus Savage, but I don't have the same emotional connection to that as I do with this, where just Warrior just goes for all of Hogan's stuff. He kicks out of the leg drop and he gets the belt, and you just see him swinging both of those belts around. It's just one of those moments of just, as a kid, I fucking absolutely adored it, and it still lives with me till now. So Rory has sent us his matches. He's excluded Brett versus Austin because we all know that's his favorite match of all time ever. But his other matches are Warrior versus Savage at 7, Bret and Owen at WrestleMania 10, Brock and Angle at 19, Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22, and HBK versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Dan, what is your number 4?
Been mentioned there by Rory. Brett versus Owen at WrestleMania 10. You may get the sense from what my picks have been so far, but I really do struggle with old school manias and old school matches to get the emotional connection with it. I just don't think it holds up to what I like in wrestling, with the exception of this match. It's such a simple story that everyone can get behind, and it's perfectly wrestled between two people who are just craftsmen in the ring. And it's what I love in wrestling matches. It's just simple but executed brilliantly. And the fact that Owen wins is great in the match sense, but then when you put it into the context of Brett winning the title in the night later on, it sets up the entire year's worth of storylines. And it's perfect. It's perfectly booked. It's perfectly executed. It's something I could watch. This is like fine wine of wrestling, where I can't just put it on, but when I do put it on, I am enthralled by every second of it.
And we will mention it more in a little while. It does appear higher up in someone else's list. Dan, what's your number 4? Oh no, done you. Bob, what's your number 4?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Bob.
I can go again if you want.
All
yeah,
right,
you
we
were
can
so good. Just do it again. We'll trick the listeners into thinking if they just went backwards again, it'd be great.
That's what I was going to get away with not having read it.
I had to include a train wreck in mine, and a train wreck in the greatest meaning of it. The TLC match from WrestleMania 17. To do what they did, and having done it 2 times prior, you would think it's impossible to pull off something creative and more enjoyable than what they did before, but they did for me. Luckily, this is the last time they did it. But yeah, I mean, I remember just watching it as a kid and just freaking out over anything that Jeff Hardy was doing. The spear, the visual from Edge when Jeff is just dangling in the air is just one of the most iconic moments you'll see in wrestling history, let alone WrestleMania history. And without question, the TLC matches made all of those guys stars. And when you really put that into the context of it, I think for me, it's just a great appreciation for what they would go on to do. And it's funny that it's, for me, that's so great because I've always been a story driven guy. I always appreciate the angles behind things. And this is one where there's no real story behind it. It's just, these guys have done it twice before. Send them out again. Who cares? And then that's just the premise of it. And I'm always a sucker for some kind of train wreck. So I figured I would include this one over the Allied Powers against the Blue Brothers, which was a close option for me here. But luckily I went with this one.
See, my number 4 is also TLC 2. Again, it was basically, as we say it all the time in the ECW shows, it's like top that. And this really was all 6 of them going top that. And the stuff they did in this one that they hadn't done before, like the giant spear from the ladders, the 4 table spot that they do, the giant ladder that Jeff goes through. It was just everything they'd done to a higher level. And then you add in Spike, Rhino, and Lita as well, just added to it. And as you were saying, Bob, this is one of those perfect destruction matches where chaos rules and has never been topped as a TLC match. So Billy's top 5 matches are Austin Rock from WrestleMania 17, Macho Man Ric Flair from WrestleMania 8, Bret and Owen from WrestleMania 10, Flair and HBK from 24, and Austin Bret at WrestleMania 13. So, Dan, what is your number 3?
It is Roman versus Brock at 31. Clearly not 34. I mean, who would put it at 34? I will shamefully admit I was in full Roman hate mode at this point. So seeing Brock Lesnar, who at this point was a fresh wrestler with the way he does Simplicity, destroying Roman was so satisfying. He just looked like a badass, but it always had the opportunity that Roman would come through. But again, like the uncertainty of it, thinking, oh, Roman's the guy, so he's going to win eventually, isn't he? But the fact that he just kept getting destroyed by Lesnar was making you doubt yourself. But then, as you've mentioned, Chris, the greatest cash-in of a Money in the Bank contract ever, and the roof would have come off that building when Rollins run down to the ring. It's so satisfying, and it's one of those moments where it's you always had at the back of your mind it would happen, but when it does happen, you're just so shocked that they're going for it. They're doing this at Mania, and yeah, it's just one of those like matches. It's very rare that you get a moment pop, but when it does happen, it's so special, and it comes after a brutal match between Roman and Brock. The right result, the perfect match for what these two guys could offer, and it's so much fun to watch. This is one of those matches I could just put on any time I want, and it would just entertain me for the entire time it's on.
Bob, what's your number 3?
It's going to be Bret Hart against Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. For an arguably pretty bad show, this was the only bright spot, and it's a classic match. If any wrestler ever complains that they need to win a match or to become a huge star or anything, they need to watch this match, because Steve Austin, within 25 minutes, became the biggest babyface and would go on to obviously make the most money ever. Everything about this is just great for me. As growing up, I was Bret Hart all the way until around this time when Stone Cold came in, and I was just like, all right, he looks pretty badass. I tried to convince my friends that it was my dad on the bus. Kind of worked a little bit. He was never around, if anybody was. I'm just kidding. But no, this is just a great match. The visual of it, the blood just streaming down his face, never wanting to give up. It just gives me goosebumps anytime I watch it. And I'm all about career-defining moments. Maybe that's a trend here with my list. And I would have to say this is by far the career-defining moment for Stone Cold Steve Austin, coming in a loss, which I think is a rare thing to be able to pull off.
And also the biggest double switch ever as well. And just, I think this is more the big hype moment for Austin than the King of the Ring is.
Yeah.
So my number 3 is also a great match off a shit show. I've gone for WrestleMania 2000s, aka 16s, Y2J versus Benoit versus Angle, triple threat, double 2 out of 3 falls match with the Intercontinental and European titles on the line. This was a perfect way to book a match and take belts off someone, yet make them not lose. Because both the falls for both of the titles come from Benoit pinning Jericho and Jericho pinning Benoit. Angle does not get beat, and it means that he carries on with his story of being undefeated going after this. And this is 3 of the best technical wrestlers of the period having a wonderfully technical match. There's suplexes, it's hard hitting. It is definitely one of those forgotten gems. You know, it's only about 15, 20 minutes, so it's not like a long one, but it was really, really fun and a really fucking novel way to get the belts off someone. And I'm surprised they never went with this idea ever again. So we now have Peter's top 5. His matches are Warrior Hogan at WrestleMania 6, Bret and Austin at 13, Triple H, Benoit, and HBK at 20, Foley and Edge at 22, and Flair, HBK at 24. Dan, what is your number 2?
Obvious one, Taker Michaels 25. Just a match that pretty much defines those two guys as the WrestleMania legends. Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, Undertaker streak combine who's the best, and it gave us the perfect WrestleMania main event, like WWE main event style match, and probably the greatest kick out of a finisher ever, with the camera angle, the facial reactions, the commentary. It's just stunning. It's a brilliant match.
Yeah, I'll jump in here because it's my number 2 as well. It is arguably a perfect match because the drama, the hype, there was that point when I was watching it live. I did actually think that Shawn could end the streak. I always had this sort of feeling in the back of my head of he can do it. He can be the one that beats Taker. And with the entrances of Taker obviously rising up and Shawn coming down from the heavens in all white, the attires being white versus black, everything on this match just was so good and worked so well. It is easily, as I said, a perfect match, and if it wasn't for my number one pick, would be my favorite match at Mania. Bob, what is your number two?
Well, it's not that match. I just want to point out that I have a huge disconnect with wrestling, probably post WrestleMania 22. Like everything for me is just, I don't even know why I'm a wrestling fan anymore at this point, but I'm just so disconnected from it. Number two for me is Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, WrestleMania 10 ladder match. It was just so different compared to really anything else you would see on pay-per-view for the time. Kind of revolutionary, I guess. I mean, I know it's technically Bret Hart's a match, and he's probably going to block me on any social media for saying that it's a great match that he wasn't in. It's his creation. Sorry, Bret. It's also a match that my mother appreciates only because she got to see Shawn Michaels bare ass. It's the only match that she's ever watched. Shawn Michaels is still her favorite wrestler. Just for that alone, she literally just walked out as soon as he pulled his pants up. But yeah, no, I thought for 18 minutes or so, it was just a great display of reckless abandonness that was pretty mild, really. And when you compare it to what's going on now, pretty mild. Again, star-making performances. I think I'll say Razor Ramon too. I'm not one of those guys that say that Shawn Michaels wrestled a ladder or whatever. Pretty big moment for Ramon. I think this is the beginning for Shawn Michaels where he's going to be Mr. WrestleMania. And that's the type of stuff that I don't forget. And I always kind of go with the first moment as being the most memorable for me.
So, Eric's top five are, in fifth place, Owen Hart and Yokozuna versus the Smoking Guns from WrestleMania 11.
What the fuck?
I know he has this special thing for WrestleMania 11. Him and Rory are doing a whole watch along of WrestleMania 11 as one of the Patreon specials for this month.
Is he just going to list the entire WrestleMania 11 card?
He doesn't. It's the only match from WrestleMania 11 that's in his top five matches. But okay. I feel we need to listen along to that Never show just to see how he gets to that point where he loves this show so much. In fourth place is Hogan Warrior from 6. In third is Flair and Savage from 8. In second is Bret and Austin from 13. And number 1 is Bret Owen at WrestleMania 10. Dan, what is your favorite match of all of the WrestleManias?
34 Manias, however many matches there are. My favorite is pretty niche. I don't think it gets talked about at all as in the top bracket, but my favorite is Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 19.
Wonderful choice, sir.
It's again purely personal. These two guys were in my Mount Rushmore of favorite wrestlers. At this point, I was all in on the Shawn Michaels return from injury. I never really saw him at his pomp, and seeing him again kind of made me realize why Vince McMahon had such a hard on for him in the 90s. So I loved watching these two wrestle, and it's perfect. There's nothing that these two guys were there and had a perfect kind of wrestling main event style match. And I think it's better than all of their 2008 stuff, which is heralded as this great feud. But to me, the match is anywhere close to what this was as a wrestling match between the master and not even the apprentice, but just the number 2 guy behind him all the time. And at this point, they both ascended to being legendary at this point. It's just amazing. I love that match so much between two of my favorite wrestlers ever.
And I have to just sort of chuck it on this one. I love how it finishes with Jericho helping him up, thinking that, he's going to shake hands and hug with his boyhood hero just to kick him in the nuts. ultimate heel, ultimate bad guy Jericho at the time. Bob, of all of the Manias, which is your favorite match?
Owen Hart against Skinner. Oh, okay, no, sorry. I'm sorry. I got confused. I'm going to go with the Ultimate Warrior taking on Randy Macho Man Savage at WrestleMania 7. Career versus career. I'm not going to lie. I may have a beard and I may be turning 30, but God damn it if I don't get emotional every time I watch that match. Randy Savage is my favorite wrestler ever. And to have him start off with Sherry and then within 20 minutes ditch her for a smoking hot Elizabeth. Everything coming full circle, the story involved, and just everything about it for me was fabulous. I actually had to dump a girlfriend because I had her watch it and she didn't get it, so I had to dump her for it. I have no regrets. And yeah, I mean, if you can't appreciate Warrior Savage, you're just simply not going to appreciate me. So that is by far my favorite WrestleMania match.
A wonderful choice. My favorite WrestleMania match has been mentioned by most people so far, but it is because it is arguably the first 5-star classic that was ever in the WWF, between two of the greatest, one of which should be in the Hall of Fame, but won't because of obviously, family reasons. Bret versus Owen, WrestleMania 10, brother versus brother, a absolute wrestling clinic for 15 minutes. This was the moment that Owen Hart was allowed to shine and allowed to show just how fucking good he is. That he was on the level, or maybe better than Bret. It brought out the one thing that kept 94 even sort of partially watchable, with him and Bret and Owen's feud for the summer. It is just the perfect wrestling match. It is counters. It is the antithesis of great in-ring wrestling. There's very few high spots. There's no sort of flashy stuff to it. It is just two guys that wrestle rings around each other and just work so bloody well. And as you were saying earlier, Dan, when Owen comes out at the end, Bret's lifted a aloft on all the good guys' shoulders, and he's just there standing in the aisleway with a look on his face of "I will beat you, brother, and I will take that belt from you because I'm better than you." It just added that little bit more to what was a great match on what's actually not a good WrestleMania 10. But fuck me, it has the best match, or at least my favorite match. So it just leaves me to thank both of you for coming on and reliving your favorite Mania moments with us. Bob, where can people find you and all your other wonderful outways of joy and wonder and stalkerism?
Well, I'm glad to know that $20 cleared to your PayPal for you to say that. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter, YoBobbyBoy89. I tweet about, I don't know, stuff, and I do potentially have a Mickey James situation here. I don't know what's going on. I'm kind of alarmed. And then IcoPod is my podcast with Austin Skinner. We're close to WrestleMania 10, where we've deep dive into each Raw starting in 93. So we're about a year and a quarter through our journey through that. And then you can read reviews, articles, magazine reviews as well. I have about 950 of those and I got to get to work on. But wrestlingrecaps.com, you can check me out there, and hopefully you guys enjoy the material.
And Daniel, what would you like to share with the group?
First thing you need to do when you stop listening to this is if you're on the desktop, keep scrolling, and you'll see loads of exclusive Patreon content, which I'm on. Click the play button and listen to our stuff. Thank you. If you're on the mobile, if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you're listening to this on your Android feeds or iTunes, keep scrolling. I'm on there. Chris Lacey's on there. Roy McNamara's on there. You listen to our stuff because you're our Patreon backers and you know how good this stuff is.
Ragey. Give us some 5 stars. Go on. You know you want to.
Yeah, you might as well just rewind this episode and listen to it again.
Well, why wouldn't you? It's probably going to be much better than the pre-show of WrestleMania.
Right. And if you listen to this 8 times, it would probably equate to 8 hours.
Exactly.
So there you go.
So it just leaves me to say thank you to both of you for joining me. Obviously, if you want musical musings, go to Show and Tell with Tunes. You know, I always put stuff up weekly on there. As I said, thank you very much for being Patreons. There will be another show, WrestleMania 11, where Rory and Eric are going to do a whole show watch along, which I'm intrigued just to hear how Eric goes on about how much he's going to love that show, because I'm struggling to see it, to be honest with you. I watched it recently a few years back. It doesn't hold up and it never was great, but I just want to hear how Eric's going to sell it. And I'm going to leave you today with my favorite WrestleMania theme. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be closing today's show with Limp Bizkit's Crack Addict. And until next time, goodbye.